The moment Toyota mentioned a car connected to water, the internet lost its mind. Headlines exploded overnight. Toyota kills electric cars. The end of Tesla. Elon Musk should be worried. And honestly, it sounded ridiculous. A car that runs on water. People have been making that claim for decades. Every single time, the story ended the same way. Fraud accusations, missing evidence, broken promises. So when Toyota, one of the largest car companies on Earth, suddenly stepped into that conversation, it felt different. Not because the claim made sense, but because Toyota knew exactly how dangerous those words were, and they said them anyway. At first, nobody noticed the small detail hiding behind the hype. Toyota never actually claimed they had invented some magical engine that drinks tap water and drives forever. That part came from the internet. What Toyota really revealed was something much more strategic, and potentially much more disruptive. Because this story was never about water. It was about what comes after batteries. For years, the auto industry looked settled. Tesla changed everything. Electric vehicles stopped feeling experimental and started feeling inevitable. Governments backed them. Investors poured billions into them. Entire countries began redesigning infrastructure around them. Charging stations spread across highways. Battery factories became geopolitical weapons. China moved fast. America moved faster. And every legacy automaker faced the same terrifying question: adapt or disappear. Most companies followed Tesla's direction. Toyota didn't. That decision confused people for years. While competitors rushed into fully electric lineups, Toyota kept investing in hybrids, then hydrogen, then synthetic fuels. Critics called them stubborn. Some said Toyota was falling behind. Others thought the company simply failed to understand where the future was going. But behind the scenes, Toyota engineers were asking a completely different question. What if the world was solving the wrong problem? Because batteries solved one issue while quietly creating several others. Mining lithium at massive scale came with environmental costs nobody liked talking about. Charging infrastructure struggled outside major cities. Cold weather hurt performance. Charging times still frustrated drivers. And underneath all the excitement sat an uncomfortable reality. Most consumers never think about. The electric revolution depends heavily on enormous supply chains, rare minerals, and power grids that many countries still can't fully support. Toyota saw that early, and instead of competing directly with Tesla, they started building toward an entirely different future. One built around hydrogen. That's where the so-called water engine enters the story. The concept sounds simple enough to fit into a viral headline. Water contains hydrogen. Hydrogen contains energy. Separate the hydrogen, feed it into a fuel cell, generate electricity, power the car, clean emissions, fast refueling, long driving range. In theory, it sounds almost perfect, but there's a reason hydrogen cars never took over the world. Hydrogen is a nightmare to handle. It's difficult to store, expensive to transport, and incredibly energy-intensive to produce. In many cases, creating hydrogen burns so much energy that critics argue battery EVs are simply more efficient. That single problem haunted hydrogen technology for decades. And slowly, most companies gave up on it. Toyota, DIDN single quotes T. Instead. They kept building quietly. In 2014, they released the Mirai, one of the first mass-produced hydrogen fuel cell vehicles. And the reaction was strange. Engineers respected it. Environmentalists debated it. Consumers mostly ignored it. There were barely any hydrogen stations. The infrastructure didn't exist. Tesla dominated headlines, while Toyota looked like they were investing billions into a side quest nobody asked for. But this is where the story starts to get uncomfortable, because Toyota may have understood something the rest of the industry didn't want to admit yet. Winning the electric car race and winning the future of energy are not necessarily the same thing. That changes everything. See, batteries work well for passenger cars, but the modern economy runs on much bigger machines. Cargo ships, freight trucks, industrial transport, backup power systems, data centers, heavy machinery. And those systems expose the biggest weakness in batteries: weight. The larger the vehicle, the harder batteries become to scale efficiently. Hydrogen suddenly starts looking a lot more interesting there. So while the public argued online about Tesla stock prices and charging speeds, Toyota kept expanding its hydrogen research into buses, trucks, industrial systems, and large-scale infrastructure. Quietly, the company started positioning itself not as a car manufacturer, but as a future energy company. And once you realize that, the water engine headlines stop sounding silly. They start sounding strategic still. The internet remained skeptical for good reason. History wasn't exactly kind to water-powered car claims. Back in the 1980s, an inventor named Stanley Meyer claimed he built a buggy that ran on water. Investors loved it. Media outlets amplified it. Supporters believed oil companies wanted the technology buried. Then scientists examined the claims. The numbers didn't work. Courts later ruled fraud had occurred. Meyer died years later, and conspiracy theories exploded around his death, pushing the myth even further into internet culture. Then came more inventors, more demonstrations, more promises. A company here, a prototype there. Claims of vehicles running hundreds of miles on tiny amounts of water. Each story attracted attention because people desperately wanted it to be true, and each story collapsed under scrutiny. That history became a huge problem for Toyota without them even asking for it. Because once social media attached the phrase water-powered car to Toyota, decades of scams came attached to. But Toyota approached the technology differently. They weren't promising free energy. They weren't claiming to violate physics. Their systems still require energy input. Electrolysis still consumes power. Hydrogen still has limitations. Toyota's argument was never that hydrogen breaks the laws of science. Their argument was that hydrogen may eventually solve problems batteries can't. That's a much more serious conversation, and suddenly, even Tesla's dominance starts looking less permanent than people assume, because the real battle happening right now isn't electric versus gasoline anymore. That war is basically over. The new war is about infrastructure. Whoever controls the next energy ecosystem controls transportation itself. Tesla built charging networks, China built battery supply chains. Toyota is trying to build hydrogen ecosystems. Three completely different visions of the future are now colliding at the same time. And Toyota knows they're late. That's why the company has started accelerating aggressively. Hydrogen factories, partnerships, new fuel cell systems, commercial vehicle testing, investments into cleaner hydrogen production. They're even experimenting with using waste, materials, and bioprocessing systems to generate hydrogen more. Sustainably. Most people never hear about these projects because they don't create flashy viral moments like a Tesla launch event. But Toyota keeps moving anyway. Slowly, quietly, methodically, and maybe that's the strangest part of this entire story. Toyota doesn't behave like a company trying to win next year. They behave like a company preparing for a world 10 years away. Because even if battery EVs dominate today, major questions still remain unanswered. Can electrical grids handle billions of vehicles charging simultaneously? Can rare mineral supply chains remain stable long-term? Can developing nations realistically build massive charging infrastructure fast enough? What happens when freight and industrial sectors need cleaner solutions batteries struggle to provide? Nobody fully knows yet, which means Toyota's gamble could still fail completely. Hydrogen may remain too expensive. Infrastructure may never scale. Batteries may simply improve faster than expected. Tesla and Chinese EV makers may ultimately crush every alternative approach. But there's another possibility that fewer people talk about. What if the future isn't one single technology at all? What if battery EVs dominate cities, while hydrogen powers freight, while synthetic fuels keep older combustion systems alive, while multiple energy systems coexist longer than anyone predicted? If that happens, Toyota suddenly stops looking outdated. They start looking early, and maybe that's why this story matters so much. Not because Toyota invented a magical car that runs on water. They didn't. But because they challenged something much bigger than that, the assumption that the future has already been decided. Because history gets weird whenever industries believe there's only one path forward, and right now, while the world celebrates batteries as the final answer, Toyota is quietly spending billions betting that the real answer hasn't arrived yet. What makes Toyota's bet even stranger is that they already had every reason to follow the crowd. They were the largest automaker in the world. Their hybrid technology was wildly successful. The Prius alone changed how millions of people thought about fuel efficiency. If any company could have pivoted fully into battery EVs and played it safe, it was Toyota. Instead, they chose the harder road, and internally, that decision reportedly created tension even inside the company itself. Because while the rest of the industry chased immediate EV growth, Toyota engineers kept dividing resources into multiple paths at once: hybrids, hydrogen, synthetic fuels, next-generation combustion systems. To outsiders, it looked messy, unfocused, almost paranoid.